I'm Emily Lutzker.
And I'm Anna Kamasia. Your tax-deductible donation makes this podcast possible. Please support us at internationalarrivals.org.
Please take a moment to hit the like button, rate us, and review the show. It makes a big difference in helping us reach more listeners.
Today, International Arrivals speaks with first-generation Caribbean-American interdisciplinary artist Nyugen Smith, currently based in Jersey City. Welcome, Nyugen.
Thank you.
Great to have you here today, and thank you for coming to speak with us.
My pleasure.
How are you?
Yeah, I'm doing all right.
Awesome.
Doing okay. Yeah.
Excellent. So, first generation American, me too.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about that, about growing up in Trinidad with your grandparents or your family's migration story?
Yeah. So, I was born in the United States, born in Jersey City, New Jersey. And then I moved to Trinidad with my younger brother. I'm trying to get some like accurate numbers on here, but I probably was about 4 when I moved to Trinidad. And I lived there with my grandmother, 2 uncles and aunt. And these are all my mother on my mother's side. And then my aunt migrated to the U.S. One of my other uncles migrated to the U.S. So it was just my brother, one of my uncles, and my grandmom and I. And yeah, spent years there, went to school there for a few years, and then came to the U.S. In 3rd grade. And that was like almost like the beginning of my memory of living in the United States. Mm-hmm.
Meaning that before you didn't really remember the United States, and then
Exactly.
And so when you first came, was there this did you want to be back in Trinidad?
I don't know. I don't remember that desire, like the wanting to be back. I remember not wanting to leave when it was time to leave.
Right.
Literally screaming and holding on to everything in the airport that I could grab onto. And then when I came here, it was just like all of this newness, even to the point where like my mother felt new, like, wanting, as a kid living in Trinidad, wanting to come up to the United States, to live with my mom and to be here. But once I got here, it was like everything was just new. Like I knew nothing, I didn't, yeah.
And you were in New Jersey, which, is also a new.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
As I name new.
Yes.
Exactly. Yeah. Some of the things that were tough though is like being in an apartment building.
Uh-huh.
That was like a thing that felt a little strange. Having always, we lived in a house, like having access to just be outside whenever I wanted to be outside.
Right.
And that was like one of the strangest things.
And the weather.
Oh, that too. That too. Yeah. Having remembering seeing snow for what felt like my first time seeing snow. Just watching it fall, just sitting there in the window, watching it fall for hours. We only saw snow on the TV, on television, or on postcards, or like greeting cards that came from the U.S.
Yeah. Me coming from England when I emigrated to Canada, same thing. It was snowing the day we arrived in Ontario in Canada, and I can remember getting off the plane. It was one of those planes where you go right onto the tarmac, and my brother and I kept touching the snow, trying to. Kept kneeling down to touch it. It was like, this is snow, oh my god.
Yeah.
It's a magical thing.
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah.
So and so you went to New Jersey, and you kind of stayed in New Jersey, and you're in Jersey City now.
Yep.
Which is one of the most ethnically diverse places in the country, actually. Right. And it's a major point of immigration.
Yeah.
A lot of people coming in and out of there. And is that something like you feel connected to, all the immigrants coming into Jersey City?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, Jersey City, it's like there is, I think the diversity that exists in Jersey City became more apparent to me when I went to teach in Dallas. And I lived there for, a relatively short time because, like I said, I started there in 2019, fall 2019, and then came home right when the pandemic began. But in that short span of time, just moving around the city, And then coming home for like a brief stint, like a weekend, or I think it was like one of the holidays that I had, and like really feeling like all of these different types of people are around, the different languages, the different kinds of garbs that are being worn. Like I have, it made me say, wow, like look at this drastic difference of how diverse the city that I'm living in is. And especially also in the area where I live, in the Journal Square area, we have, I mean, there are mosques there. There are Hindu temples there. There are Greek Orthodox church there. There is the Egyptian Orthodox Christian church there. There is a Jewish temple, a synagogue. There is, I mean, just in that area, like within 6 blocks of where I live.
Wow.
And so it's it's a really, really beautiful and special place as it relates to that.
Mm-hmm. And a lot of good Filipino food.
Oh yeah, good Filipino food. Yeah, definitely. Like I went to a grammar school called St. Peter's Grammar School at that time, and when I first came to the U.S., and the majority of my classmates were Filipino or Puerto Rican. And the majority of them lived in the downtown Jersey City area. But now downtown Jersey City is like a totally different place.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Because it's being gentrified?
Yes, big time.
Okay.
Big time.
And so those communities have been pushed out to the outskirts?
Yeah.
It's classic tale.
Yep. Absolutely.
This podcast today is in partnership with the Immigrant Artist Biennial.
Mm-hmm.
And your work that's going to be featured in the exhibition that's coming up, Excavated Selves, Becoming Magic Bodies, opening at Alchemy Gallery on November 30th. Mm-hmm. And I wondered if you could tell us a little bit about that work that's going to be in the show.
Yeah, so that work, I say that I feel like when I was reading that title again, I was trying to remember whether that title is ascribed to the title of the exhibition at the particular gallery, because the overarching theme title for the biennial itself is different.
Right, it's conflict zone.
Conflict zones.
Yeah.
And I was thinking about, I was meditating on that a little bit more as I was creating the work.
Okay.
And I think that, they work together in terms of the theme of the exhibition as well. But for this work, they chose to go with something more two-dimensional. If we can say that, a wall-mounted work as opposed to one of my freestanding assemblages. And I've been thinking about maps and fictitious maps as part of my Bundle House series and Bundle House Borderline series. So the Borderlines is and people, when I say borderlines, is because I'm focusing on creating borders within these maps, and I'm creating these borders with thread by sewing these pieces of paper that I rip apart. I take like sheets of paper, rip them arbitrarily, and I fill them with drawings of what I call bundle houses, these houses made of found materials, thinking about people who have to rebuild their lives from things that remain after some sort of crisis. And I'm draw them, and then I figure out the shape of the actual landmass that I'm considering within this work. And oftentimes they are hybrids of different maps as a way to conceptually tie them together. So in the past, I've created these maps based on places that were devastated by very specific hurricanes. Mm-hmm. So merging the contour of each one of these as I overlay them, and then finding the shape that I want to the final map to be. So within this new series here, I'm thinking about people who have liberated, and when I say liberated, I'm using that as like an umbrella term. So people who have been important to a particular location, whether they were freedom fighters, whether they were leaders of like labor movements, whether they were having like breakthrough in education, in different ways that they have helped to lift up their people within their land space. And oftentimes we hear about these people, but not necessarily like we might hear, oh, they're from this place, but have no idea what that place looks like. So what I'm doing essentially is taking the idea of a portrait and usually in profile, that shape, that outline of a person. And that essentially is the connector to a person who is I'm considering the liberator. Mm-hmm. So when you look at it, it looks like the outline of a person.
Right.
Just like the state of New Jersey. If you look at the state of New Jersey, I've always associated that with a male person the profile looking
with a hat on.
West. Yes, exactly. So the head is up here and then the bust. It's a bust.
And this flat hat at the top.
Exactly. Exactly. So I always find these kinds of visual references within maps. And there was a map maker from the 1800s. Her name was, there's 2 L's. It'll come back to me. But she had these beautiful ways of thinking about history and people and culture and drawing those figures within, and these kind of narratives within the contour of the country itself. So I'm also referencing that lineage of cartography within these works. And on these maps, I'm now also including references to flora and fauna, whether like what kind of tools they might have used to liberate the space. And then within I'm making these rods that the map is suspended from, so it has a little bit of movement. And I'm hand carving these faces on the ends of the rod as a way to allude to mythology and to perhaps some sort of tradition that existed within that land space. So referencing all of these ideas in relation to landscape, history, culture, liberators, ritual.
And are they all connected to America, or are they?
No, it's a fictitious location.
Okay.
But it's the everywhere.
Right.
With reference to like deep ties with history and culture and ritual.
Right. Yeah. And I feel like your work really blends this idea of ritual and kind of migration, literally. And this, as you said, building houses from nothing or from what's left, the remnants. And so can you talk a little more about your use of found objects? Because that's very strong in your work, both in your sculptural work and your collages.
Yeah. So I started using found objects mainly out of like financial necessity. And I think that began in college. I was, had to go buy art supplies, and then all of a sudden it's like, that canvas is expensive. Start to find, there's that free wood, you can paint on this, and it's interesting. And then I saw that I was introduced to the work of Jean-Michel Basquiat by another friend in college at that time. And I was like, he paints on everything. That's what I'm talking about.
Right.
And that's when I started to get connected with it. And then when I had my very first studio at 660 Grand Street in Jersey City, which is essentially became like a very important hub of artists and creatives after 111 First Street. We were in an area where there were still a lot of industrial buildings that were defunct.
Okay.
A lot of dumping was happening in that area. People would just come and unhitch their trailers, and these trailers had stuff in them, and people would break them open and take and leave, whatever. And so we would often, my artist friends and I who had studio spaces in that building, grab duffel bags and go on recon mission to collect things.
Right.
As a way to have materials to continue to work. And I found that, in seeing these, like finding these older objects, like it comes with these histories and these stories. Big fan of storytelling and the imagination. And so as I see the object, sometimes immediately I'm able to recontextualize the object as like, what is this object? What has this object now become, or what does it have the potential to become within the context of the work and the ideas that I've been working with?
I also think like found objects, like, well, what has it been before, and who brought it there, and who carried it there, or who cast it off?
Yeah.
Like I think about migration and everything that you're leaving stuff behind when you're leaving somewhere, whether you want to do it. And this is all stuff that's been left by people, wherever they're wherever they're going or whatever that new project is.
Yeah.
And that figure of carrying, like the migrant or the refugee who's carrying their objects with them on their back or in bags. But that's classic kind of trope that comes through all kinds of work.
Yeah.
Is this collection of objects, your bag of things.
Which is why I love this name Bundle House, like that you have for your work. Like, to me, it's like, all of this bundle that you make your house out of, but at the same time, it's like, well, it's a bundle of houses, of people. It's both the things you have yourself and your community that you're traveling with.
Yeah. I mean, it's what you carry, really.
Yes.
Like, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You, I was really drawn to your spirit carriers, and I wondered if you could maybe talk about that, because that incorporates a lot of found objects too. They incorporate a lot of found objects. Yep.
So in 2016, I was in my last summer in my low residency MFA program, and I came there. So that was, you have to do a thesis exhibition. And, it's one thing where they send you a floor plan and they send you photos of the space, right?
Right.
And you start to imagine and you create your proposal for it. And then you get there and you look at the space and you're like, I don't know if this is going to work. And that's exactly what happened to me. I got there and it just wasn't, the ideas it wasn't going to happen in there. It didn't have the strength. It didn't have the power. It didn't have the cachet that I wanted it to have. So essentially, I kind of took everything out of there and knew that I had to start over. Didn't know how I was going to. There had been, up until that summer when I got there, there had been a few different killings of unarmed Black people by police. And it was very heavy in the air. And then when we were there in our program, another was killed. And so the weight of that was within our entire program.
Yeah.
And it was weighing heavily on me in so many different ways. So I'm sitting there in a lecture and feeling that, thinking about the fact that now I just dismantled everything from the studio space, from this exhibition space. What am I going to do? And I just started doodling as I'm listening to the lecture, and these forms started to come. And it was the first drawing, essentially, of what would become a spirit carrier. And I was really thinking about these ideas, like in the moment that the person's life was taken from them, what happens to their spirit in that moment? Where does the spirit go? Is the spirit traumatized also, just as traumatized as the body is being traumatized in that moment? And I felt like there was there was a need to care for that spirit in that moment until it goes where it needs to go. So it was like, hey, this idea of this vessel to hold it. And at that time, we were, I had just come off of a beautiful independent study with a professor who's now a friend, Denenge Akpem-Diced. And she introduced me to so much about Yoruba spiritual tradition and many other spiritual traditions that come from the continent of Africa. And thinking about, we were talking about the Yoruba chief and the crown that they would wear, the conical crown, and they would have these beads that hang down as a part of the crown. And that those beads, it serve as a function. The function it serves is to protect the chief from any kind of negative energy or thing that's coming towards the chief, and also protect the public from the power of the chief by obscuring the face. You're not really supposed to see the chief's face when they're there in that role. And so this idea of the protection, right? The top of the spirit carrier essentially became that chief's, the Yoruba's crown. And the beads hanging down as these ideas of the protection of the spirit, protected from any further harm, damage, or violence. And then also to kind of like, okay, yeah. So all of that started to come together theoretically, conceptually, to create these, what I call spirit carriers. So I've created a number of those. And they're not specifically for any individual that was killed, but it's about the idea of of protecting spirits when they go through this kind of trauma.
Right. Mm-hmm. They're very evocative. They're very evocative, and I love the fact that they also look like hot air balloons.
Yeah.
Because you feel like they're carrying something. Again, this idea of carrying that comes through in your work, but this idea of carrying something up, carrying something away, and carrying something, like carefully maneuvering them away.
Yep.
And so it's migration of a different sort too. So I think they were really provocative for me. I found the work really interesting for that.
And these, like, in the found materials, part of that is like just to be able to think about I always go back to, even though my work is located in a very specific histories and locations, it's also about the human experience. And so, every culture has folklore. Every culture has some element of magic. Every culture has some element of aesthetic relationships to materials. And so I'm drawing from this idea of, if I take this off of here and I add a couple other things to this, like it can serve this function, a specific function, but then allude to so many other things like lightness, like opacity, like the ability to penetrate or not.
Visibility,
protection, so as I'm creating these spirit carriers, it's like all of these things. I need something to be able to emit signals. Okay, how do I do it? Oh, I'm going to attach these beads on these wires so they become like antennas.
And so would you say that your work gathers these sort of mythologies and ideas rather than being specific or located in one particular?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
And I think that comes through too, looking at your work. I think that it's sort of like between a past and a present and a now and a then, but it's not necessarily culturally specific, I guess.
And a here and a there.
Yeah, exactly. A here and a there.
Yeah.
True.
Yeah.
Although I see your work and your own spirit as being very half full rather than half empty. You have such a positive joy and like spirit of caring about you, and which it's amazing because a lot of the subjects that you're working with, like you're making the spirit carrier, but there's so much trauma there. In the, I don't know if it's in the past or if it's in behind it, like a trauma and a violence and, all of this hardship, why the spirit needs care.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think it's also too, like, as you say, it's a very heavy subject matter. Yeah. And there is, if someone, like, I would say that as I'm making this work, I'm meditating on those things. I'm also thinking about so many other things, but it's never like, I don't know if I can ever produce something that that didn't have an element of lightness and approachability and even playfulness, even though it's like rooted in this harm and danger and death and destruction.
It's actually something that's come up in a lot of the discussions we've had with different artists on this podcast, is this idea of that you have to find the humanity in it and you have to find the playfulness of these dark moments. I mean, it's hard. I'm not saying that everybody can find it, but just that it can't all be darkness.
Yeah.
That we have to find these moments of joy, really, of play.
Hope and imagination, like your maps, imagining a different place, imagining a fantasy world, where they're, cocoon, a beautiful cocoon to be carried away.
Yep. And, we were watching this movie last night called Inside, and William Dafoe is the main character. And essentially he's an art thief.
Oh, and he gets caught.
He gets stuck in the house, right? So spoiler alert for anybody who hasn't seen it yet. He's stuck in this house, and he goes through these like moments of psychosis where, and we were trying to figure out whether or not like this is some sort of art project, or whether this is some sort of like, this person knew that if you come in and steal my shit, like I got you because I'm setting it up where you're trapped in this house. We're going to fuck with the heat and the cold. We're going to do all this. And so he's like, begins laughing hysterically at sometimes. He begins hallucinating, sometimes fits of anger, hurts himself because he's making careless decisions in that moment of, whatever. And so as I'm making the work, there's sometimes like, yes, this moment of like going so deep in it, it's almost like psychosis. It's like laughing about the point, like how silly this part of the thing is. Like, oh, the little slide, like, right. But it's, I can laugh at that. And then at the same time, be like, always back and forth between the reality of what the work is addressing and these moments where I can, of escapism within the creation process.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's the beauty of looking at the work too, that as a viewer, you kind of enter into those moments of back and forth and moving between emotions.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah.
You use a lot of found objects in your sculptural work, but then you turn to collage a lot. And I've been thinking a lot about collage, and you're in a collage show that's coming up in
Nashville.
That's right. Thank you. And I wondered why you're drawn to collage. If you could maybe talk a little bit about that.
Yeah.
I think it's an interesting choice for forms of representation, and there's a lot of artists who are working with collage.
Yeah.
So I wondered, what is it about collage that you're drawn
to? The remake, the reimagining of, I think with collage is like situations.
Yeah.
For me. So reimagining, flipping through a magazine, you see a person posed a certain way, and immediately that pose is transmitting something. It's communicating something. And within whatever this pose is communicating, like the immediate associations within what I'm thinking about within my practice and my work, it's like the connections with those associations. And then how can I now push that further or further articulate that, right? And then the beautiful thing about that is the journey in the creation of that after being sparked by that original idea, because now I'm continuing to flip through magazines and such in searching for the images in relation to where I am in the thought process of where that is. But another image might say perfect, but it took me around another corner. Right. So,
well, interesting. So it's about the gathering.
Yeah. And the journey that all of the gathering takes me. It's like the pick your own path. Right. So you read a page and then you have the option of choosing the next.
The balloon adventure.
Choose your own adventure books. Yeah. Right. Oh, I'm going to go that. Oh, I'm going to take the balloon. If I take the balloon, I put the balloon in there, then it does that. Yes.
It's about shifting meaning.
Yeah.
And shifting narratives, shifting boundaries. Yeah.
Yep. And I always tell my students two things that are really important. One is it's important to try to be always in that headspace of what you're thinking about and working on, so that in your daily life you're continuing to make the associations and ideas continue to generate. I often talk about this in relation to when they're so like, Mrs. Smith, like I got to get a job. I'm like, all right, if you got to get a job, try to get something in the space where you can continue to think creatively.
Right.
Right. Because once you start to shift and you're forcing your mindset to go in that direction, you're off that path of continuing to be in the headspace of. And then you got to try to jump back in that headspace. So you're missing all of these other possible connections throughout the day. Right. So as I'm flipping through the magazine, it's like I've already been in that headspace constantly. So the moment I begin flipping that magazine, I'm there already.
Yeah.
Right. So now it's about finding these.
So, and to not let life force you to have a separation between art and life, between your art making process.
Yes.
So are you never not in your art?
it's like at this point, it's impossible for me to never to be out of it.
Exactly.
To be out of it.
It is who you are.
Exactly.
And it is how you live your life.
Yep.
How you view the world, all of those things.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then the collage allows for that. The other thing is once you remove something from its context, like the original context where you located it, it has the infinite potential to be something new.
Mm-hmm.
So, as a rule of thumb, is as we would make collage, because sometimes people make collage. Beginners would say, it's like you look at it and be like, well, you're collaging by cutting out and gluing on, but this thing here, there's no cohesion, right? And a lot of times the cohesion isn't happening because they're still including like bits and pieces from its original context.
Right.
But if you remove the entire thing from its original context, then you have more opportunity to recontextualize this thing.
Yeah.
Right. Place it anywhere, inside anything, and it's brand new.
Exactly. Yeah. It's all about meaning making.
What's the power of art to open things, ideas?
Yeah. So there are choices to be made, right? So in life, every day we have from the moment we wake up, there's choices to be made. What am I having for breakfast? Do I get up right in this second, or do I lay here for a moment? And so when someone makes a choice to go see art, right, whether they are an avid, gallery goer, art viewer, consumer of art, or just happens, someone says, I'm going to invite you, a friend brings them. Right? So when someone makes a choice to go see a work of art, I believe that it's like that is that person is taking a moment out of their lived life, right? So their actual life, to spend it with a work of art, something someone else has created. And so when they make that decision, whether or not they're asking the right questions or making quote unquote dumb comments or whatever it is, they have taken the time to be present with that thing. And that thing could be theater, that thing could be a painting. There is some sort of synapses that happen within their minds, their bodies, or whatever. We may never know what that thing is. But the fact that they have spent that moment with the thing, they've made the conscious decision to do that. They had an option of not doing it. So, point blank.
Done.
Done. Right? And then the other part of that is that I now believe that if someone is going to take the time to come to spend that moment of their lived life with me, with my work, what do I want to give them? Right? And not everyone will feel the work.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Right? I've had people come into space and just look at my work and just turn around and walk away. It took me a while not to take that personal, but right, there's some people that don't feel it, and some people do. But I believe that it's imperative for me, my practice, to put that into the work, so that when people take the time out of their lived life to engage with the artwork, there's some sort of exchange that happens there. And, it's something that I work at constantly to really generate the power within the space of the work that can reach a maximum audience, no matter where they're coming from, in some way, like that something humanistic coming to the work. So that's the way I think about that and process that question.
I think thinking about it as an exchange is a valid way too. I think that you can't control what people take away from your work, but I think that you can present an experience or an exchange of some kind, and I think that's the best you can hope for as an artist.
And performance really also taught me that in a big way. Because there's so many times I go to or I see a performance and I'm asking myself, who is this performance for?
Mm-hmm.
Is it for the artist or is it for the witnesses who are present?
Right.
You know, because sometimes there's that feeling, you know. So I'm constantly thinking about what is the exchange in that moment.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So tell us a little bit about your performative work, about your performance work. What's your connection to that as opposed to making an object and having the object live?
Yeah. So performance, I think I kind of came to performance around maybe 2011, 12, around there. And it came like, you know, at an invitation to make a performance. And I have a theater background, so I did theater in college. I wanted to go into acting, so I was doing like extra work on television and film. And so that background kind of gave me like, oh, I can kind of approach this thing y'all calling performance art from that lens, the things that I learned about performing in front of people, ideas, right, with the body and that kind of thing. And then, so it was about me telling stories through the actions and thinking about other objects and quote unquote props that would help to convey the ideas. And then I also love this idea that performance didn't have to be linear from what I was seeing. It was like about this abstraction of the ideas and stuff. So I'm like, word, this is improv, like play. And, you know, began to do it. And the response I felt was great. And I felt like the response was as strong as it was because it was very different from what the people had been seeing. And all of this was really happening at Grace Exhibition Space or with other people inviting me that were adjacent to Grace Exhibition Space.
Right.
And then I remember being told, hey, you know, that performance you did, it was more like theater. That wasn't really performance art. You know, like if you're going to have blood, it should be like real blood. You cannot fake blood, you know. And that was a specific example they gave as an example of how real it should be. And, you know, I kept thinking about this idea of like, oh, it's like theater. And I was like, well, what's wrong with that?
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I kept questioning that. And then when I started studying with Denenge, she shared this book with me, Black Theater, Ritual Performance in the African Diaspora. And that essentially became my Bible, as it was my Bible as it relates to performance art and helping me see that I'm part of a different lineage of performance. Mm-hmm. And I was like, this is what I'm talking about. And
right.
the essays and things I was reading, I was like, this is where I'm coming from. And that scholarship empowered me and helped me to really dig deeper into that tradition. And then when I went to Trinidad to research Carnival in 2017 and participate in Carnival, that also heavily influenced my performance work. So this is where I'm coming from with my performance practice. This is the lineage and the legacy that I'm coming from with the work, and hope to be able to share with a wider world that there's other kinds of performance happening there that's just as important, as valuable as this kind of historical idea of performance art in the Western world.
Mm-hmm. Right. Mm-hmm. Do you have any performances coming up?
No. No performance coming up.
Let us know when you do.
Yeah, absolutely.
You have a busy fall coming up, though.
Yes.
You have shows in Vermont, Blanton Museum in Texas, and then Nashville.
Yes.
At the Frist Art Museum.
Frist Art Museum, yeah.
Am I missing anything?
I'm in an exhibition in Canada, actually.
Oh.
Yeah, and Guelph, I think is how you say it.
Yes, you do. That is how you say it.
All right. The Art Gallery of Guelph.
Oh, great.
And they're doing an exhibition there with artists from the Caribbean as well, Caribbean region, whether we're first generation outside of there. So I'm part of that, showing a photographic series that I made in Barbados in 2017.
Fantastic. Yeah. And of course, Excavated Selves, Becoming Magic Bodies, opening at Alchemy Gallery on November 30th as part of the Immigrant Artist Biennial.
That's the one.
That's the one.
Yes.
Thanks so much, Nyugen, for joining us today and having your spirit carry the International Arrivals podcast with us. It's been such a pleasure to have you. And if you want to know more about Nyugen's work, you can visit NyugenSmith.com, NYUGENSMITH.com.
International Arrivals is a fiscally sponsored project of New York Foundation for the Arts. Your tax-deductible donations make this podcast possible. Please support us at internationalarrivals.org.
Welcome.
You have arrived at your destination.
Bem-vindo ao Pinto Place.